we're ever going to have. Major shift. Major change. For the first time on these tiers, we have broken a tier apart. Oh, you are? You have a petition.
Good stuff.
Okay, interesting.
I'm petitioning.
Interesting.
Well, then get your glasses and your old man voice ready because we are all ears. But we got to start in Green Bay this morning.
That character died.
Well, I know. When Aaron Rodgers is good, the Packers are usually good. And when the Packers are good, everything in Wisconsin tastes better, except cheese curd, which never tastes good. Packers are 8-3.
Wow.
Rodgers playing like an MVP.
How can you
and on
start the show
Sunday,
with that
cheese
bad of a
curd is
take?
always bad. On Sunday, he eclipsed the milestone of 50,000 passing yards. Just the 11th quarterback ever to do that. Is it me, or does Aaron Rodgers seem extra motivated this season? Here he is on milestones.
When it comes to records, I love them and milestones. Like, I do take pride in them. I think they're more things you look back on when you're done playing. I don't think I'm done by any stretch of the imagination, even though some people may have thought so in the off season.
I love that.
Just drop something so right down there, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. I know he is. His expressions are great. Brandon, are you surprised Aaron Rodgers is still using all that stuff that happened in the offseason, all those offseason headlines to push, to motivate him this season?
Absolutely not. When you think about the ultimate competitors, you got to think about how they approach work every single day, not just on game day. When I took the field in practice, I wanted everybody to walk away from that practice, the groundskeepers, the PR staff, the equipment manager. I wanted everybody to go home that day and say, did you see what Brandon did today? Or let me tell you what Brandon did today. So when you draft a quarterback in the first round, when you're probably one of the greatest players ever in the National Football League to potentially take your spot sooner rather than later, then of course you're going to have a chip on your shoulder. But I will say this. Maybe the Green Bay Packers are smart. Maybe they're right, Nick. If they draft a quarterback and it forces him to do this, to ball out the way he's balling, then they're pretty smart. Like, we can go back to 2016 year and even going back to 2012, Nick, where he's having his greatest year ever, probably better than 2012, and that's saying a lot.
So here's the problem, Brandon. I knew someone was going to say this, and this is why Aaron's quote makes me upset. Because Aaron, I'm sure Aaron does have a chip on his shoulder about them drafting Jordan Love. He had a chip on his shoulder for a decade about Alex Smith going 1 and him falling all the way to the 20s, where he had to then sit behind Brett Favre for 3 seasons. But the reason this narrative bothers me is it lets Brian Gutekunst off the hook. Aaron Rodgers is great because Aaron Rodgers is great. He's great because, as far as physical gifts, he's one of the 3 most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen in the history of the league. Even his down years, as he has put it, are career years for most guys, and this year he's having a career year even by his standards. But doing this almost reverse psychology of they drafted a quarterback because they wanted more out of their already great quarterback, it lets Gutekunst off the hook for the fact that no team in the league is getting less out of their draft this year than the Packers are. Jordan Love isn't even ahead of Tim Boyle on the depth chart. And it lets Gutekunst off the hook for in 2019, A.J. Brown goes 51, DK Metcalf goes 64, Terry McLaurin goes 75. The Packers had picks 12, 21, 44... 12, 21, 44, and 75. So they passed on McLaurin 4 times. They passed on DK and A.J. Brown 3 times. And that put them in the position they were in last season. So I just don't buy this idea that they traded up in the first round not to draft a player, but to draft an emotional cudgel for which Rodgers will fight against. But I do think, Wilds, that is what the narrative for the Packers almost has to become. Otherwise, the pick looks absurd on its face.
Okay, I'll throw a wrench in the system. Just because I'm conflict averse, I would listen to this quote if I ran the Packers, and I'd be like, hey, Aaron, do you want us to trade Jordan Love? Let's just be honest. Do you want me to trade Jordan Love? Because it feels like we got like a Jimmy G, Tom Brady, Patriots thing. Your feelings are a little bit hurt. You think that we don't believe in you. Remember, we traded up to get him. The Colts probably want him. We traded up because someone's going to grab him. It might have been the Colts. The Patriots traded Jimmy G. They got 9 players in return. Also, we probably owe it to Jordan Love to let him play somewhere. There's been 4 quarterbacks in the first round. They all look great except Jordan Love, who's just riding the pine. So, Nick, would you consider trading Jordan Love if these little, like, kind of passive-aggressive quotes from Aaron Rodgers keep coming?
Absolutely. If Rodgers keeps this up, Brandon, I would say if he keeps this up and they play well in the postseason, whether they make the Super Bowl or not, you absolutely have to consider trading Jordan Love for this reason, I would argue, Jenna, is you have to make, he's a first-round pick. So you have to make a decision on him basically by the end of year 3. That's the spot Baker, for example, is in this year. Are you going to pick up the 5th-year option or not? If Rodgers shows no signs that Love's going to get on the field in the next 2 years after this one, then you're going to end up probably having to trade him for 20 cents on the dollar or lose him for nothing. So, yeah, I absolutely, not just because it would make Rodgers feel better, but because you can recoup some of the assets you squandered on that pick right now.
All right, so let's table the future for just a second and talk the present. Patrick Mahomes, obviously still a pretty heavy MVP favorite, but there's Aaron Rodgers right on his heels. Brandon, is Aaron Rodgers closer to stealing an MVP away from Patrick Mahomes than the odds would lead you to believe?
I believe so, Jenna. We have a jet ski and we have a tube. So riding the jet ski, we have Patrick Mahomes. And right behind Patrick Mahomes holding on, you have Aaron Rodgers. And on the tube, you have Russell Wilson. I don't know if you've ever been on the tube, but it's wild back there. You can fall off any time. So, yes, it's closer than we think. Now, Nick, a lot of people want to make you believe that, oh, Patrick Mahomes he's a clear-cut MVP right now. I don't think so, man. I went to my buddy Hubs, and I said, Hubs, help me argue this point that Aaron Rodgers could potentially be the MVP. It's interesting what we found. All these categories, all these passing categories, he leads the NFL in. It doesn't say Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't say Russell Wilson. It says Aaron Rodgers. We laughed at Brian Westbrook last week when we said, okay, who do you have as MVP? And he said Aaron Rodgers after a loss. And we just laughed and demolished him. But he wasn't far off, Nick. I truly believe that this could potentially get really interesting in the next couple weeks where you have Aaron Rodgers now get in front of the jet ski and now you have Patrick Mahomes is holding on. Patrick Mahomes with the schedule, he could potentially go to the tube. I'm not sure.
Oh, Russell Wilson? Okay, all right. First of all, you painted a beautiful picture there, and I appreciate that. And shout out to Hubs. He wears a lot of hats on this show.
Hey, can we get our graphic team, our design team to get that picture designed up? Let's get that designed up, that picture.
Oh, okay, all right, we should have that in the next 20 minutes, I'm sure. Well, so Mahomes is driving, Rodgers is behind his back holding on, and Russell Wilson's on the tube riding the waves. I love it. So here's the reason why I think Rodgers is in such a rough spot. I'm going to go in the way back machine to 2011. In 2011, Drew Brees set the NFL all-time record for completion percentage. He also set the all-time record for passing yards in a season. His team was 13-3. He had a passer rating that year of 110, and he had a touchdown interception ratio of 46-14. So how the hell did he not win league MVP? 110 passer rating, 13 wins, 46 touchdowns, most yards ever, highest completion percentage ever. Well, because Aaron Rodgers that year had 45 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He had a 122 passer rating, and his team went 15-1. So a year for Brees that in almost any other season would win you MVP, it didn't, because you had a guy who simply was playing perfect football and his team's record was damn near perfect as well. That's the situation Rodgers finds himself in this year on the other side of it. He is having a year that is MVP worthy for 90% of NFL seasons historically. Unfortunately, he's up against a guy whose team is going to go 14-2, 15-1, who's going to have a touchdown interception ratio of